James Walton, it's been a while. Thank you for joining me again in the trenches.
Thanks so much for having me, Jerm. I appreciate it. It's been a while. Congrats on the family expansion, man. How beautiful is that?
Well, it's part of prepping.
Prepping the next generation, for sure. No doubt about it.
James.
Yeah, it's a great adventure.
I've chatted to you a few times over the last few years, and
sure, yeah.
And I love chatting to you because we cover something really important, and nobody talks about it enough, I think, and that's prepping.
I agree.
That's prepping.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's in passing at best anymore. You know, it's sort of like build an emergency kit and get prepared. Things are looking a little crazy out there, but yeah, not a lot of people go in depth on it, and not a lot of people go in depth on it outside of like pre-made sort of YouTube style content. You know, like it's not a lot of free flow and kind of shows like yours where you bring a prepper on and really have a conversation with them about the topic. You're right. It is. I don't know if people assume they could just figure it out on their own or what, but you're right. There is a lack.
I have a feeling it has to do with the sort of instant culture that we live in, where everything is done for you.
Could be. Could very well be the case, you know. Do you think we're pulling out of that, or do you think we're digging deeper into that?
I don't know, man. I don't know, but
yeah,
but that's why I'm chatting
right
to you,
with you,
so that we can bring it back. We can bring it back to the front.
Hey, it's essential. It's essential. I've told you before about the 100-year amnesia. You know, we've largely lost the bulkhead of what skills and understanding of the planet we had in 100 years, thanks to food in tin cans and TV dinners and, you know, that kind of stuff, medicine in bottles. We just forgot it all in the span of 100, 150 years max. And now there are legions of people out there clawing it back. And I think that's a good start, you know?
Yeah. So, James, for my UK column audience that doesn't know who you are, let's just quickly cover that.
Yeah, sure. Real quick. What's important about me, I think, is that I'm not prior military. I don't have any cool credentials. I was a chef before becoming a prepper and freelance writer in the genre, you know what I mean? And since have purchased the Prepper Broadcasting Network, and we built that into a 15-host podcast network, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, everywhere. And, you know, now we do almost everything there is that can be done through the network regarding prepping, homesteading, survival. I mean, you know, herbal medicine, foraging, blacksmithing, even some health and wellness and fitness stuff wrapped up in there. And I've just, over the years, learned alongside my audience, and we built the Prepper Broadcasting Network into what it is, you know, and it's been a blast, man. It really has.
What is prepping?
Well, it depends on, you know, where you grow up. I talk to some people who grow up in the backwoods in Mississippi, and they think that prepping is a funny word for how they grew up, you know, and it's just what it is. For me, I'll give you like the esoteric. Prepping is a way for men in particular to access a bunch of lost skills without having to explain it or call it a hobby, or, you know, things like that, like splitting wood, shooting a recurve bow and arrow, blacksmithing. Those are things that I never would have done ever in my life. But because I became a prepper, all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I should learn these skills. You know what I mean? Because we're getting prepared for the unknown. For the average person, though, I think it is just about being ready for what happens in life. You know, the things that will undoubtedly happen in your own life. It will be it job loss or COVID 2020. You know what I mean? Life is full of bumps and ups and downs, and it's, you know, it is a suffering affair from time to time. And when you're prepared, you just. Can I give you one more? Because there is one more that is modern, the modern day. I figured this out just this year. It is also anti-anxiety. It's an anti-anxiety medication for the times. I don't think it's always been that way, but what I look at nowadays, is prepping, homesteading, that this crowd of people, they have much less anxiety built in because we're all feasting on the headlines, and the headlines are terrible. And if you have no way of dealing with that, then anxiety is going to go through the roof. You're going to go absolutely insane. Iran and Israel and World War III, and you know what I mean? All the stuff that's going on. But prepping, I think, really has become sort of an anti-anxiety drug. A real one, one that works.
I was going to ask you why prepping is important, and I think you have already now touched on that it deals with, I guess, personally speaking, anxiety. But I mean, on a more practical level, why does it matter?
Well, I mean, you can look at it from a number of angles. I think it's an essential because I think we've overshot the human path. You know what I mean? I think we've gone a little too far with technology. We've gone a little too far with comfort and convenience. Prepping and homesteading and those things pull you back. Self-sufficiency, they pull you back so that you're more of a human than what you were, in my opinion. But like we're cybernetic damn near nowadays. So I think for on a personal level that's very important. Practically speaking, though, you're going to live a healthier lifestyle if you're growing your own food. If you're cooking your own food, you're going to live a healthier lifestyle. I think it's one of I really, like, over the past couple months, Jerm, have been like, is prepping health and wellness? Like, is it a health and wellness thing now? It really feels that way lately. And, beyond that, from the financial side of things, you look at the cost of food, and when you're a prepper, you put food up from maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, things like that. And you put money into assets like land and like silver and maybe even gold. And it's a different way to manage money and things like that. So it can touch every aspect of your lifestyle, and you talk about building your children up. Your children grow up in a household full of preppers and the self-reliant mentality. They grow up with chickens and gardens and guns and that kind of stuff. And, you're just creating a different generation of kids compared to like me, who grew up in the 90s in a suburb and wasn't exposed to anything like that. So there's a myriad of benefits, man. Really turning it into a lifestyle is the key, though. It's not just buy the bag, buy the food, and forget about it. You got to live it.
So when we're talking about prepping, what are we actually then talking about?
So, I mean, if you want to get into like the bean counting of it, at the fundamental level, you want to have food, water, medical, security, backup power, definitely backup power. Now that's gone up the ranks over the last few years, right? You want to have at least 6 buckets, 7 buckets. Emergency communications is another great one, that you have plans and backup plans for, right? On hand, more than the average person. What we learned through the last probably 10 or 20 years is that when disasters happen, people stay home. So a good place to start is fortify your home. Have enough food in place, have enough water in place so that you can stick around for a while until things blow over. I think while the bug out is really cool and really an interesting topic, I think most people tend to bug in and stay home when disaster strikes. And prepping is what gives you the ability to do that because you have excess, right, resources. And on top of the resource level, there's also the skills, right? So really it is a culmination of sort of resources and skills on top of what the average person sort of carries in their pocket day to day.
Give me some examples.
Sure. You want resources or you want skills?
We'll start with skills.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the most basic, and I think one that a lot of people had kind of dialed in a little more in years past, is like how to deal with the first aid. Like a basic fundamental first aid is something that most people aren't trained on. I think sort of like the loss of the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts in America
we don't
put an end to that.
We don't say Boy and Girl Scouts anymore. It's them Scouts.
Oh, the them scouts. Is that what it is? I don't know. We left a long time ago, but we were in it for a little while. They wouldn't let us.
It's they, them scouts.
The they, them scouts. We weren't allowed to show up without a mask on, so we quit. We got tired of that number. But yeah, so skills that like first aid, skills like, one of the most interesting ones and fundamental ones is knowing what is out in the wild. You know what I mean? In terms of like the trees, the plants, the things that have been medicine for a very, very, very long time, thousands of years, over multiple continents across the world. Like everybody treated things with plants, with trees, with roots. And those are skills that we just forgotten. And those are skills that you can, over time, with the help of books, with the help of courses, you can relearn those things. At the end of the day, you're just really fundamentally relearning. Foraging. There's tons of food out in the wild. I don't know, not every country has access to the wild places the way that we do in America, but my front yard every year has dandelion, which the leaves of dandelion are edible, the root are edible, violets that grow, curly dock that grows. It's just stuff like right out the window that most people mow or weed whip, you know what I mean? And we've forgotten that they're food. So, those kinds of skills are good examples. You can get into the tactical, the sort of shooting and martial arts and self-defense and fighting. The home security skill set, I think, is a really important one. People basically tie their entire home security into like a lock on the door handle and maybe a lock on their window. So you can develop a better understanding of how to secure your property. It's a pretty big list. You know what I mean? There are aspects of prepping that touch almost anything that fortifies your life, fundamentally makes it better and makes you healthier. As far as I can tell anyway. What's really been lost in the prepping community lately is the doom of it all. The mainstream media is kind of taken over the doom. Whereas we used to use the doom as a platform to sort of propel our ideas. Now it seems like I said, it seems more like we're pushing a lifestyle on people anymore. And that lifestyle is the things that you learn in the house and, outside the house, the raising of chickens, the raising of things like I spent the last 3-4 months raising quail before they were all eaten by a fox. But that was a new thing for me, new food source. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's a tributary with, it's a river with many tributaries, man. Like you can go down all kinds of different routes with prepping and learn and always be welcome and always be learning. And it's been a great life because of it. I'll tell you that much.
But it sounds like you're only talking about living in the countryside. I mean, what about the millions and millions of people who live in the city center?
Well, I live in the suburbs, actually. I live in a suburb. I live on less than an acre of land. Our host, Jordan, was living in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach. She had chickens and she was living in a condominium. You know what I mean? I have a guy who lives on a mountainside, right? And he has a tremendous homestead. Dave Jones, the NBC guy, he'd be a great guest on the show too. But he lives on multiple acres, farms all kinds of different animals, gardens. Everything he does, Jerm, is on 1.5 to 2 acres of land. So there is a misnomer that you need a large plot of land to do things. Like we have apple trees, fig trees, raspberries, pawpaw trees. I don't know if you know what those are. Gardens, perennial plants that grow in the front and the backyard. And we're in the suburbs. I really think that now if you're in the city center, like you're talking about, it's going to be a harder lift. But I really do think that the mass of Americans are capable of doing, and probably people in cities all over the world are capable of doing a lot more than they do. And they use the idea of, well, I'm not on 10 acres, so I can't do any of the cool stuff as kind of an excuse. You know what I mean? One day I'll get that big plot of land and I'll do all those cool things. I don't plan on getting a big plot of land. We can do plenty with what we have.
But I mean, I think the idea of prepping is not necessarily to have, 100% knowledge of everything. I mean, it's an
no way.
It's an ongoing journey.
It's a lifestyle for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle. But in the early days, and I think that's kind of what you're asking about. In the early days of prepping, when you're just getting started, you are shoring up before you get into all the fancy. You really are shoring up food, water, home security, first aid, knowledge, and also skill sets. You know what I mean? You're covering what I call the base level of preparedness first. You got to do those things first. You want to be prepared for whatever kind of weather events, natural disasters that hit your area on a regular basis. That's a great place to start. You know what I mean? To say, we get hit by hurricanes or whatever it is, I want to be prepared for that. This is what I need. Backup power, gas generator, gasoline, whatever it is. Because everybody's circumstance is a little different. But at the beginning, you really are establishing your position and then, deciding how well prepared you want to be. Do I want to have a week's worth of food, a week's worth of water? You talk to me, I say a lot more than that. You need a lot more than that. 3 to 6 months is probably where you want to be, looking at the world nowadays. But all that takes time. It takes tremendous time to have the things that I have and do the things that I do, because that's what it is. But if you're just getting started, you can choose that timeline that you want to be safe and fortified in your home at home. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever it is. And you build on that with, like I said, food, water, the ability to keep the lights on, charged devices, maybe some sort of emergency communications. And you'll be better prepared than most people around you, just by taking action on those few things.
And if you want to get excited about it, start off with your daily carry.
Oh, the EDC, the old EDC. Yeah, is that still popular? That was a big thing, the EDC, for a long time.
I still enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it is fun, no doubt about it. I mean, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Mine's expanded over the years. My EDC includes like my entire fishing outfit now.
What?
It does. Like, I have a backpack. I always carry a backpack because I like to have like running shoes on and shorts, because when the summer hits, man, I love running and working out in the hot weather. And so I always carry a bag, because you can't always holster a firearm effectively in certain kinds of shorts. You know what I mean? So I put it in the backpack. And then over the years, I just realized that fishing is just always happening in life, and it's one of those things that, just because we all do it in my house, that I just carry a fishing backpack, and it's not that big. It's also kind of a gray man-y type thing, right? I don't have a tactical backpack on where people are like, what's up with that guy? It's a Cast King backpack, and, it has fishing gear in it, and it also has, spare magazines, tourniquet, sewing kit, some, what else do I have in that thing? Prep related, like a recharge, power bank in there, those kinds of things. You can carry more in a backpack, you know what I mean? Spare knife, those kinds of things. So
I always carry a knife on me, always.
Yeah, why not? It's good to have a blade. It stinks when you don't have one and you need it, you know?
It's actually incredible how often you end up using a knife.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I don't carry as much is a flashlight. Yeah.
But you don't need to if you have a cell phone.
That's a good point. I think I probably should carry a headlamp. They are valuable. I'd rather, nowadays, like, there was a time when you had to have a cool tactical flashlight. You know what I mean? Like, you had to have like an Olight S1R flashlight when you were in the EDC crowd.
I've got one.
Do you? I mean, I have one too. They're great. But now, at this stage of my life, having done the things that I've done, I'd take an Energizer headlamp over anything. You know what I mean? Because then both my hands are free. I can aim it. What I'm looking at, I'm actually lighting up and not forfeiting a hand. I don't have to find a magnetic thing to stick it to if I want to free up my other hand. The headlamp is just far superior, but it's not cool. You know what I mean? It's nowhere near as cool as like a tactical aircraft grade aluminum flashlight.
But I mean, it's not just about what you carry. It's also knowing how to use this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's 99% of people's problem nowadays. Over here, I have a backpack that just came in for review, and it's full of stuff. You know what I mean? And I go through these backpacks from time to time that you can buy pre-made. And, you know, the biggest struggle when you buy a pre-made backpack is not even choosing which one to buy. Though, if you want a recommendation, Lima Tango Survival they're the best of the best and the most affordable. It's actually using what's inside the bag. You know what I mean? And learning how to use what's inside the bag. And this is really tough for people who, particularly if you're not a camper / hiker, there's not a lot of opportunity for you to do it. You know, there's not a lot of opportunity for you to get out there with a survival bag on your back, walk it somewhere, open it up, pull out the emergency radio, pull out the whatever you're going to cook on, right? The jet boil, whatever it is in there. So you got to build that into your life. You got to build those things into your life for sure. But in terms of EDC, the biggest thing in the States is I know there's a bunch of people running around with firearms they never shoot, maybe have never shot. You know what I mean? As part of their EDC.
You got to go to the range.
You got to go to the range. You got to also put yourself in serious position. You have to understand, probably the most fundamental for anybody who's carrying a firearm and thinks they're going to use it is, know your target and what's beyond it. Oh my God, there's a bad guy. Let me shoot him. Oh, wait, there's a little girl behind him, and I missed because I'm not that good a shot. Right? That doesn't happen here, surprisingly. But if things get kinetic in a lot of different places, it will happen. Because you have to be intentional about it. You learn it here when you go to get like a hunting license. You learn that mentality because you could shoot somebody in the face who's wearing camo across the field if you're not careful. But yeah, same thing with medical. You pack a bunch of medical. I got real scared because it was becoming increasingly popular to carry an entire individual first aid kit with all kinds of medical gear in it. And one of the things that was packed into these was a decompression needle that you would stab somebody in the lung with should their lung have been punctured and filled with blood. And one of my worst fears was like, I get into some kind of situation and then some doofus with an IFAK who doesn't know how to use it comes start stabbing me with the decompression needle in the heart or something. You know what I mean? Trying to do good. So yeah, to your point, got to put some reps in. Cooking is the dark horse skill, though. It really is. Like, I didn't know that when I got into this thing, the carryover skills from being a chef, like just like knowing how to butcher stuff, huge. Knowing, how to separate ball joints from sockets, you know what I mean? In animals is a big deal. Well, you hunt, and
yeah, but I mean, I don't know that stuff.
Oh, you don't butcher your stuff? You send it off?
Yeah, I mean,
it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
I don't like to get into the animal too much.
I gotcha. I'm not a fan either, to be honest with you. I don't really like killing very much, but I do it when it's got to be done.
I just want to point out, just on that, since you mentioned hunting, yes, I do hunt, and people think you hate animals if you do that. I actually think it's a far better way to get meat.
For sure.
When you go hunting than via a slaughterhouse, And also, just because you're shooting an animal doesn't mean you hate the animal. You're trying your very best to be as precise and efficient as possible.
Yeah, it's no fun. Like I've butchered a lot of things, killed a lot of animals that not even hunting, like harvesting pigs, that kind of stuff at, different places with different hosts from PBN. And it always sucks for me. I never feel good. You know what I mean? Like I'll never feel really good about it. I always kind of carry guilt about killing stuff. And I think that's good. I would hate it if I lost that. You know what I mean? I would hate it if I could just kill something and be like, I feel like once that goes away, you lose something. But yeah, with the cost of food and everything nowadays and the quality of food, like cooking is a thing. Cooking is literally a life-saving thing. I think if you were to rely on eating out exclusively and pre-made foods exclusively, you probably lose a decade off your life, I bet. I bet a study could show the difference pretty easily between people who ate home-cooked meals for most of their life compared to people who ate pre-made, prefab, frozen, fast food, whatever meals. Health has to be radically different, just from the sheer amount of additives and things that go into you from a lifetime of that, So
you mentioned survival earlier. I had the great pleasure of interviewing a guy by the name of Cody Lundine. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yeah, I loved Cody Lundine when he was on with Dual Survival.
There are very few people, very, very few people who are at his level.
Oh, Cody, yeah, he's all the way in. I remember watching an episode with my wife, and they were on a mountain and covered in snow, and my man had socks on, and that's it. Normally he's barefoot, but for this episode, he went way out and put a pair of socks on. I was blown away.
So, yeah, I mean, he turned it into an art.
Yeah. In many ways it is. It all comes down to like the amount of time in a day. You know what I mean? Like the only way you can be a Cody Lundine is if it pays the bills and you're in the woods all the time, and most of us don't have that privilege. So you got to figure out where you want to spend your attribute points. Life is definitely like a video game, right? You get a certain amount of time and attribute points and got to figure out where to spend them, and that's one of the biggest challenges really for everyone. But when you're in the prepping world, it's a huge challenge for sure.
The whole thing, though, is that, the term prepper, it's strange to me because it kind of sets you apart, where the whole point of prepping is just to be prepared for eventualities in your daily life.
Oh, yeah. It's a divisive word. It's divisive in the community. There are people who are 100% preppers who are like, don't call me a prepper. I don't like that word. It's definitely, it is a word that has power. There's no doubt about it. It's a weird one. Because if you just came out and said that you did the things that a prepper does, but didn't use the P word, people would be like, oh, it sounds like a pretty cool life. But the moment you say I'm a prepper, a doomsday prepper, then it's like, this guy's crazy. And now we look at everybody else in the world who's not a prepper and we go, these people are crazy. Can you imagine living on a planet like this at a time like this and not having extra food and water? It seems insane to me. You know what I mean? Not carrying a gun, not knowing how to defend yourself in a world like the one we live in, not being situationally aware. Situational awareness is probably, if you could figure out a way, and maybe I should, to train the world on situational awareness, like you'd be a billionaire because it's a skill you don't need a gun for, but
the peripheral vision.
Peripheral is a part of it. But yeah, situational awareness is the concept that we've all lost because of our cell phones, which is just understanding what's going on around you at all times and what threat level you're experiencing, and it's an important skill that almost no one takes advantage of anymore because we're all like this. You know what I mean? We're walking through the world like this, distracted. So it's a big one, though.
You said water, cooking, fitness.
Huge. Yeah. Another dark horse.
What did you say?
Food, water.
Medical.
Yeah, I think before, basic medical, right? You don't want to have no medicine and no way to stop bleeding in your house. But I'll tell you the one that I think should be way up there, probably right under food and water, is backup power. We are a power-hungry society, and our greatest survival tool of all, whether you want to admit it or not, is that. You know what I mean? That thing does so much for you in terms of dealing with a real deal emergency, right? Should the cell signal be gone and all that, that's a different story. But in most cases, you want to figure out what's going on, what's the weather like, when's it going to end, where's the threat, call people that you care about. All that's going to be done on your cell phone. So at the very least, backup power should be something that you have on hand to some degree. And that could be as cheap and as simple as, like, I always recommend a laptop power bank. You can buy like power banks that are like a stick, and they don't really do really well. They barely charge a cell phone. But if you buy a laptop power bank, they're about like this size. You could charge your phone multiple times on it, or charge your wife's phone. If you can't get anything else, can't afford anything else, and you just need some concept of backup power, that's probably the cheapest way to go with the most effect.
We've got a great book here. Let's see if I can get this to show on the camera.
Is it The Art of War?
Big book.
John Seymour, the new complete book of self-sufficiency. Oh man, that's very cool.
Look how thick that is.
That is a whopper. Wow. You got to build it. You know what I mean? And the only way you build it is through hard, struggly type things, you know? And that's why I think the fitness is such an unparalleled thing when it comes to prepping. Because meditation is a lot harder than you think. That's one of those things where you can really build a sort of an unbreakable mindset. I challenge any
Marcus.
Go ahead.
Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. Sitting still quietly without your phone, you know what I mean? That's tough. But really physically demanding workouts is, to me, the best way to build your willpower, to build that mindset.
Let's chat about that.
Yeah,
Just for a moment. I know this is not going to interest a lot of...
I've got a great example, because I just yesterday, I posted we have a prepper fit and health section on our website, pbnfamily.com, and I posted a heavy kettlebell workout routine for our members over there. And that is the 90-pound Bigfoot kettlebell from onit.com. I don't even know if they sell it anymore. Actually, I got it years ago, but it's so sweet. It's a kettlebell with Bigfoot. The head is, Bigfoot. And there's not a lot you can do with a 90-pound kettlebell unless you're a real animal. And so I wanted to put together a workout that could show you, deadlifts, swings, squats, overhead presses with 90 pounds. You could do that if you're strong. And it's those things that are demand. This is why I like to work out in the heat, like I talked about earlier, because the heat adds another desire to quit. And that's really all it is, right? At the end of the day, what you're talking about in survival mindset is just recognizing when your body's like, I want to quit, and then pushing past that. It happens easy with workouts. It happens really, you get to it real easy when you're working out in the heat. Your body's like, we need to quit. It's too hot. Bad things are going to happen if you don't quit. And then you just push through, and, you hear it. Everybody hears that little voice,
I really do enjoy pushing some weights. Of course, since the birth of our little boy, it's been very, very difficult, but it's getting a little bit easier now.
I'll tell you what. But I'll tell you one thing that really helps. When your boy gets old enough, my kids started doing this out of nowhere. I don't think my wife likes it very much, but it's so motivational that I can't stop them from doing it. They call me fat all the time. I feel like,
my wife does that.
Like, Dad's fat, right? Joking, because I'm not fat at all. But just like hearing it on a regular basis, you get a whole nother gear out when you're running or working out. And
James,
yeah, go ahead.
When your wife tells you you're fat, that cuts.
Oh, I'm sure it does. But there might be something to it, Jerm. You might be living too good. Yeah.
But I mean, look, just on that, this doesn't interest many people, but I really do enjoy, weight training. More specifically, barbell training, and I've got my own setup in my garage. So I'm a member at the gym, and I have my own setup in the garage.
That's the way to fly.
So I'm trying to decide which I prefer, but I think I'm going to go back to my.
I'd say keep both. My advice. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I find going to the gym more motivational.
My advice to people, especially when they're just starting to work out, is to build a program with as many options as possible. Like, you should have as many options as possible. I have probably 10 different things I could do to work out. You know what I mean? And I think that's vital, because I think you wake up some days and you're like, I don't want to bench press today. That seems boring. I'd much rather swing kettlebells or go for a run or do yoga or play VR boxing. Dude, the VR boxing is off the charts right now. It's unbelievable. You'll lose all kinds of weight. You start doing that. You might have a heart attack.
So you put something over your eyes.
Oh, it's tremendous. It's a game called Thrill of the Fight 2. Look it up. It's crazy. They have online multiplayer now, Jerm. You can fight little kids from across the world. Knock them out. It's fun. No, it is a hell of a workout, though. To be honest, I work out a lot, and it is a hell of a workout, really. But having those options gives you the ability to say, I don't really want to work out today, but maybe I do want to go hike in the woods or something like that, So put it all on the table, and it makes working out easier.
something that we do fairly often is, I want to say camping, but sometimes more often than not, it's glamping.
Yeah, I got you.
But the point is that we'll try and get out, into nature.
Yeah, I went out on a freezing cold January a few years back by myself and just set up camp. I didn't even wind up sleeping there, but I set up camp all day, put the tent up. I had the camping stove. I don't know if you ever use one of those in the winter. They're fun. And it was probably around 6 or 8 hours into the whole thing where I was just I felt free of everything. You know what I mean? I guess it was enough time away from the phone and the electronics and the Wi-Fi burning into your brain that it was just oh my God, I've leveled up.
So down here, we have what's known as the Kalahari Desert.
Yeah.
It's this big stretch of desert in the southern part of Africa.
Sure.
It's huge. It stretches across countries.
You camp in the Kalahari Desert?
We did about 2 years ago.
That sounds scary.
It depends. It's huge. So you go to a game park.
Oh, I gotcha.
And you camp in the game park.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we did. And I tell you what, it's beautiful. Just that sun, the heat.
Oh yeah.
Driving through the sand, seeing animals, really appreciating nature, at its most extreme. And then of course we have stuff in the vehicle, but I took Flint along just to
play around.
Just to play around. And it's so much fun starting a fire with leaves and twigs and a flint and it's a good way to practice.
That's how it works. You don't just learn because you need to know the skill, right? You always revert to your lowest level of training. That's what they say in the prepping world.
But there's a funny twist. This one camper, he saw me doing this, and I was struggling a little bit with this flint. Not with the flint, but with the leaves, with the twigs. Getting it going. And he walked all the way across, and he said, "Listen, I can see that you're struggling. Can I help you with some matches?" I said, "No, I've got matches."
You're missing the point, fella.
The whole point of prepping, James, is simply self-sufficiency and not relying on the government and other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really not that radical an idea. It's basically how people have survived for a long time. It's a little more isolated than tribal living, I guess, was probably back then, but it really is about that. And because at the end of the day, Jerm, I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience has been to rely on those institutions. You usually get let down. Sometimes you're even worse off. You know what I mean? Look at people who got shoved into the Superdome in New Orleans during Katrina. They relied on the government to set up a safe place for them. That place was filled with rapes and robberies and the whole nine. It was worse off than if they'd been left to their own devices. So I really do think it is, you're always going to look out for yourself and your family better than anybody else. There's no government official that's going to say, "I wonder how Jeremy's doing. Let's go check his family out and give them everything they need." You know what I mean? So it comes down to you, at the end of the day.
If somebody is, a complete urban dweller and they're listening to this conversation, James, and they're thinking, all right, I'm inspired. Where do I start?
First thing I would do is give someone a phone call outside of the city. Establish that first place that you're going to go if the worst case scenario happens in your city, so that the red lights are blinking. If you're into prepping, chances are you might even have a little bit of a head start, but you can get out of that city if need be. That's probably the best place to start first because it's actionable, it's free, and it's usually a phone call away. You're calling an aunt, an uncle, a friend, a parent, whatever, and just saying, "Hey, things get bad, I'm coming, I'll bring X, Y, and Z." And maybe you can work with them to store a little extra stuff at their house too, so that they're ready to take you in when you show up, but that's sort of like the poor man's bug out location. And it's what everybody in the city needs, because you don't want to be trapped in a city, and then from there, you establish what's that route look like. So how am I getting out of this city? what kind of gear might I need? What kind of backpack should I put together? What should I wear so I don't look like, you don't want to kick the door out and look like some kind of tactical madman with a Kevlar helmet on, or you're going to draw a lot of attention, right? You want to look like everybody else in your city, and just mosey on out of there to safety. So those two things I think are critical before you start planning how you're going to grow food on your rooftop, your quails in your closet. You know what I mean? But you can stockpile food and water in an apartment, in a studio. You can put 10, 20 cases of water in the corner of even a small studio and have a lot of water, particularly for 1-2 people, should water problems occur. Here in the city where I live, we had 2 instances where the water's been shut off for days at a time or had to be boiled this year alone. Real legitimate issues with the water. And that's a problem most people can solve and get through with just medium prepping, minor preps.
The thing though is that people will worry that the water will go stale or the food will go off.
Well, you got to rotate your food. Your water's going to be fine. If you need water, you're not going to be like, this is not Perrier. You know what I mean? You're going to be like, oh, we got bottled water, we're good. Because remember, if you have older water, you can use that for washing. You know what I mean? You can use that for hygiene, whatever, and drink the newest stuff. But with food, you got to rotate your inventory just like anybody else, anywhere else. You store extra food, and you store the food that you eat, right? You don't say, we're going to store a bunch of black beans because that's what the preppers store. I never eat them, but we're going to store them. You store what you eat so that you're rotating the stock anyway. And that way you're never really stuck with too much food that's too old. That's sort of like inventory management 101, just on a civilian or citizen scale.
What about something like meat? You have a deep freeze or something?
We just went through a survival exercise where we ate survival food 3 days a week and nothing 4 days a week. And one of the nothing that we couldn't forage or hunt or kill or fish. And one of the things that I found out is everybody needs more protein, and everybody needs more shelf-stable protein, myself included. And I have chickens that produce eggs and that kind of stuff out back. But a freezer's okay. When the power goes out, though, you're on a very short window, and then maybe you have hundreds of dollars worth of meat that you're going to lose. There are really good companies out there, Caveman Foods, Keystone Foods, that produce decent, way better than your average canned meat. There are companies out there. There's a company out there called Prepper Beef that produces freeze-dried steaks diced. So you can get strip steak diced up, pre-cooked, freeze-dried. The thing that I'm going to do is put protein powder on the shelf, a lot more of it, because I supplemented with that protein powder through our survival hell month, and it made a world of difference. I mean, it really did make a world of difference. And in a bad situation, you're going to want a protein source that's quick and easy, something like that. Stir it into water, drink, and you got 360 calories and 30 grams of protein, something like that. So that's what I would do if I were especially if I were in a place where I had limited space. I would say put the protein powder or some kind of high protein snack on the shelf for that implicit reason, rather than have to depend on a freezer, especially if you're in a city, because you're on the grid. You're likely not going to have backup power. So when the power goes out, it's, cook it all, thaw it all, and salt it all, something like that.
But that's why camping also does help, because even if you're just having a bit of fun, you still learn about some of those things.
Definitely.
I mean, when we went away recently, we took a portable fridge that's powered off solar panels, which we took with also.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's nice. That's a good little thing to play with. That's gear that you need practice with, I'm sure. You got to figure out where to set the panels to recharge it properly.
Yeah, we had a tough time because we had too many trees in the one location.
Right, yeah. See, those are the things you want to learn. My friend Dave Jones, he's a host at PBN. He always says, and I think this is essential prepping advice, you never want to have too many firsts. In any operation, you never want it, when it all counts, you never want to be doing everything for the first time. First time I'm using this knife, first time I'm using these solar panels, first time I'm using this gun, first time, you know what I mean? This tent, the whole thing. So to your point, that's what camping does. It eliminates a lot of those firsts for you.
You haven't mentioned this, but self-defense. I mean, not everybody can carry a gun or even a knife for that matter, but you need to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like, it really is one of those back to the attribute points kind of thing. You know, it really comes down to what you're going to put your time and effort into, because self-defense is a big question. You know, one of the cool things that are around everywhere now are MMA gyms, and I think learning basic jiu-jitsu and basic Muay Thai are probably the quickest ways to learning how to defend yourself. You know what I mean? But you got to put a year in before you really know what you're doing. You know what I mean? You're going to have to spar people to know that what you think you know actually works, you know? And then you got to upkeep it. You know, I went to an MMA gym for like a year and then hung a heavy bag out back, and, you know, you can keep up with it. You can keep sharp. You can, you know, one of the things that people take for granted all the time is we have weak typewriter fingers and fists. You know what I mean? Like, you whack somebody in the head with your fist and break it in a societal collapse or even in a long-term disaster. Now you got a broken hand on top of all your other problems, you know? So hitting a punching bag, doing those kinds of things, it'll strengthen your hands and toughen your body up. I think that's important too. But yeah, it's all about time and, you know, what you want to prioritize. I think everybody should know how to fight, though. I think if everybody knew how to fight, it would be a much cooler place to exist in, because people wouldn't be so ready to fight, you know, all the time.
But there'd also be less crime.
Yeah, I think so. I think people would say, well, that doesn't look like too easy a target, you know? It's always the easy targets. So, but it takes time. You know, everything takes time. Really, to people who are new and who are just getting started, like, don't discount doing things today, and then from there, it's one foot in front of the other, and do something every day, you know? Something easy every day.
Self-sufficiency, James. Self-sufficiency.
Yeah, well, you know what it comes down to, Jerm, is self-discipline, really. You know, it's one thing to want to be prepared. It's one thing to want to have these skills or these weapons but at the end of the day, you're only going to get prepared if you have the discipline to get up every day and do the things that you need to do, you know? And that's outside of work. That's outside of family. So you got to do all that. And then you got to have the discipline to say, I could play Call of Duty right now, but I'm going to go hit the punching bag for 20 minutes and, you know, get my cardio up, toughen my knuckles up, that kind of thing. That's my life, man. That's what it takes. It takes that kind of discipline. Not that I don't do my fair share of video gaming, virtual reality boxing, but, you know, you got to have that discipline piece for sure.
But there's also a sense of manliness. You know, you were talking at the beginning of the conversation about this being connected to men.
Oh, yeah.
Women can also be prepped, obviously.
Oh, for sure. Well, they bring a lot of things to the table, especially usually on the cooking side. You know what I mean? And on the foraging side and on the healing side, they have an intuition built into them that we don't have. You know what I mean? And it goes a long way. And then, of course, you know, the whole motherhood thing is really handled by the women. You know what I mean? In terms of like the midwives and those kinds of things. Like, that's the way people gave birth all the time, and long before it was customary to wind up at a hospital. You know what I mean? To give birth, it was midwives and neighbors and people in the group that came over and helped with the labor and all that kind of stuff, and wet nurses feeding other people's babies. Like, yeah, that's, like I said, it's just those old skills that are resurfacing, and people are going, yeah, maybe it's weird, but maybe better than corn syrup based baby formula. You know what I mean?
I went through a phase a couple of years ago, James, when I was trying to carry as much stuff on me on a daily basis, but without it showing.
Yeah, you had one of those jackets with like 50 pockets. Did you ever see those things? I forget what they were called. There was a jacket going around with all those pockets.
You look ridiculous in it, though.
Definitely. There was a time where I used to carry a full-size flint and steel on my keychain. My brother-in-law used to laugh at me about it, and looking back now, I laugh at me about it. But sometimes when you're in the early days of prepping, Jerm, you get scared. You get petrified because there's a certain amount of information that you're taking in on a daily basis when you're prepping too, which is, what am I prepping for? Oh, biowarfare. Well, what's that look like? How bad could that go? An economic collapse. Okay. What's that look like? How bad can that be? So some of it does come from a place of fear. I mean, there's always some of it that comes from a place of fear, you know, and sometimes that's great motivation too, but it makes you do silly stuff.
Some of it also backfires. But it also backfires sometimes. Like, I've been, you know, at the airport where I've forgotten that I've got like some sharp objects or knife or whatever on me, and then they, you know, you can't go through
confiscatado. Yeah, that's the worst. Well, I bought a bucket of red wheat, hard red wheat, when I was really nervous. Early days of prepping, 5-gallon bucket full of hard red wheat. Now, remember, I'm a chef, trained, college, great restaurants in Philadelphia. I worked in them. Maybe the one ingredient in the world I didn't know what to do anything with was hard red wheat. I didn't have a grinder, and I bought a whole bucket of it just because I read enough prepping blogs at the time, and I was scared enough that I said, oh, I guess I need to buy that against all rationale, you know? So yeah, you could get trapped. You could definitely make some terrible decisions like carrying 40 knives on your person.
I was actually just chatting this morning to the local gun store. You've obviously got a hunting rifle.
Yeah, 30-06. Yep.
Okay, I was about to ask you. Okay, all right. So I'm guessing that's where this is going to go. So I've got a 308.
Nice. Well,
but there's a big rivalry between 3006 and 308.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought it because it was huge. And I wanted to, when I bought it as a new hunter. And I said, let me get a nice big round so that when I hit a deer with it, it's dead. You know, either from shock or I have no clue. It's not very long. I don't know.
Oh, no, mine's got a slightly shorter barrel so that I can put a silencer on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine is not a tactical looking weapon. It is a scoped hunting rifle for sure. You know?
Yeah, mine too.
Oh, okay.
It's a CZ.
I gotcha. Mine is a Savage, pretty low budget, 30-06. I bought it probably 10 years ago now, you know, but it does it. It gets the job done. I mean,
my brother-in-law got angry because he said, no, you must get a 3006.
No, I don't really have much of that in me. I know guys who fight over their AR-15s versus their AK-47s and that kind of stuff, but I'm pretty simplistic with guns, Jerm. You know what I mean?
I've shot both, and I must tell you, I prefer the AK-47.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's just more gangster.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, it is villain. It's a villainous weapon for sure. But I don't know. I feel like an AR-15, you barely even feel it. It's a cool weapon because it's like shooting a .22 rifle almost, you know?
An AR-15 is a great gun. However, James, the fact that they make them now in pink.
You can't get a pink Kalashnikov? I'm sure you can.
I mean, there's a name that's going around now for the pink ARs.
What do they call it?
They call it a Barbie doll gun.
Oh, the Barbie AR. Okay.
And you can take it apart, you see, like a Barbie doll, and you can put different parts on it.
Well, there's a lot of prima donnas in the gun community, I can tell you that much. So it's probably a pretty apt name.
Okay, James, let's come in for a landing. How can I follow your work?
I mean, the best thing to do, you could just plug in Prepper Broadcasting Network into any search engine on your phone, any podcast provider, any social network. I think we're pretty much everywhere now. You know what I mean? You look up the Prepper Broadcasting Network, you'll find podcasts, video podcasts, that kind of stuff. Our landing site is prepperbroadcasting.com.
Oh, it's as easy as that.
That's it.
I thought you were going to... All right. Well, on that note, James Walton, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Always a pleasure, man. Talk to you soon.